How are you? This is Anthony Morore on Book Talk at Book Place. And today we are very lucky to have one great person here who is none other than Steve Howard. Steve is someone who's got a lot of experience. He's got 40 years of international senior sales and marketing experience. And Steve has authored 22 books. Yes, I said 22. And today we are lucky that he's with us and he's come to share with us one of the books, which is How Stress and Anxiety Impact Us. Yes, but he's going to put it very right for us. So without taking more time, I'm going to introduce to you Steve Howard. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Thank you, Anthony. I love your energy. I love this. A great opportunity to speak with your audience here. So thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. And so please tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, I was born in the United States and
Yeah.
grew up in the United States. Hired out of college by a company in Texas called Texas Instruments. After 3 years, they sent me to Singapore.
Yeah.
And I just fell in love with living the international lifestyle. So I ended up staying and living in Singapore for 21 years, working for
Okay.
4 different companies,
Yeah.
and then went off on my own and was approached by a publisher, a UK publisher,
Mhm.
to write a book about corporate image and
Okay.
corporate image management way back in 1998. And that was my first book. And so I've been writing ever since. And as you say, 22 books under my name and 9 under a pseudonym. And now I help people publish books as well. So I have a little sideline business as a editor and a publisher of people who are writing personal development books or professional development books.
Oh, wonderful. And I believe someone who is watching this is also imagining himself or herself being an author one day, because I understand that each and every one of us have a story, have a book inside of us.
I would hope so. I think everyone has 2 or 3 books inside themselves.
So if you do have your listener out there and you have a book that you would be wanting to write, Steve is the right person to talk to because he has the
Yeah.
experience. It's always good to have someone who has the experience before you to guide you along the way. So
Yeah.
I see that you have a lot of experience. I mean, apart from Singapore, you've been all around the world. Where else have you been?
I have. I've been, well, I've lived in 4 countries. I've lived in the United States, Singapore, Australia, and now I'm living in Mexico.
Yeah.
Um, but I've traveled all across Asia, the Middle East. I've been to both Kenya, your home country, and
Yeah.
Chad in
Mhm.
Africa. Kenya for holiday and Chad for training for business,
Okay. Yeah.
and also throughout Europe. So the only place I have not traveled is South America. And so that is obviously on my list. And now that I'm in Mexico City, and once the pandemic lifts and we can travel a bit more, South America, here I come.
Oh, yeah. And thank you very much. And you mentioned of the pandemic. Now, this has been a tough time for each and every one of us. I don't know where you are, how stressful it has been.
Well, it hasn't been too stressful for me, in honesty. I've been working from home since 1993. So the pandemic, the lockdown, that was just kind of natural for me to be
Okay.
working from home.
Mhm.
But, I took it, and I actually sat down with a lady in Mexico at the beginning of the pandemic, and she was quite concerned about what she was going to do. And I said, well, let's put some plans together. And I said, what have you wanted to do? She goes, well, I always had this book idea.
Mhm.
I said, well, here's another book idea. And so she took my book idea and I coached her. And she thought she'd take 2 years to write her book. So
Okay.
we sat down in March and we published her first book in August,
Yeah.
her second book in January, and her third book on March 8th, International Women's Day. So she's come up with 3 books in
Yeah.
1 year that we published. And so it's just a matter of, I think it's mindset, quite frankly, Anthony. It's deciding that, look, I can either sit on the couch and watch Netflix all day long, or I can I can do something. And in her case, she wrote book, and I wrote 2 books during this period as well. So, and I helped 2 other authors write books. So in the last, 15 months, I've helped bring 7 books to the marketplace. It's just,
Oh,
it is tough, but
yeah.
it's also an opportunity. And so it's how you look at life.
Yeah, it all depends on how you look at life. Even during the pandemic, that's when I wrote my first book.
Yeah, it's great. See, same thing.
And funny thing is that I've been thinking of writing a book for 20 years before I now came to write the book during the pandemic. And the issue is I had that mindset. And someone else out there, when the challenges come, like the pandemic, they have the mindset and they know how to face it and put it into productivity. And
Yes.
the question is, we have a lot of people who are undergoing some challenges in life, like job wise. You've been working from home, other people have been working from home. Yeah, it's okay, so they have an income, they have a source of living. But we have so many people who had not had something during this pandemic, and they could have been very stressed and very anxious about their own life.
Yes.
I think these are the people that we need to reach out to right now, and with the mindset that you have, and maybe some of what I have, we can
Yeah.
share something that could be helpful.
I think so. And and I think an opportunity to volunteer, you have to have a reason to get up out of bed every morning.
Mm-hmm.
A positive reason to get out of bed every morning. And if you have a goal of that,
Yeah.
this is the time to implement that. But that's why this book came out. This book I published in June last year,
Okay.
How Stress and Anxiety Impacts Your Decision Making.
Yeah.
And the pandemic is very stressful
Yeah.
for a lot of people, and it is impacting their decision making. And so that, the book has a lot of tips about how to overcome that, how to use mindfulness, how to use various techniques to get out and
Mm-hmm.
control stress and control anxiety
Mm-hmm.
and make those harder decisions. At least try something, whether you're a success or not. At least try it, give it a go. I mean,
Okay. Thank you very much. And before we even go to the solution, the tips and strategies to overcome the anxiety and and deal with it in the proper way, can we get from you some of the experiences that you may have come across where the impact was negative? Maybe you can give us some few case studies.
in my life, things that have impacted me
Not necessarily,
negatively.
not
Oh, okay.
necessarily, even from
Okay.
observation.
Oh yeah, a lot of things. I mean, I've been in the business world now for 40 plus years.
Mhm.
I coach people for probably the last 20 years. Yeah, people lose their jobs.
Yeah.
I lost my father 8 years ago. I mean, and he and I were very close.
Yeah.
And so, this is, I read a quote today, very interesting, about, life is lumpy. Life is not smooth all the time. And we have to determine what's the difference between the lump in our throat
Mhm.
when we're nervous and anxious. What's the lump in our heart, which can be positive, like you fall in love, you meet somebody, you get excited about a project. That's the lump in your heart. And the lump in your stomach,
Yeah.
which is again that a sign of nervousness or maybe lack of confidence. And you know life is not smooth, but in
Mhm.
each case we can overcome it, and overcoming our challenges is probably some of the best part of what life is all about.
Yeah, definitely overcoming our challenges. So, in fact, because we are never, no one is assured of a smooth life. I mean,
Mm,
no one goes through a smooth life. I think this is the reason why we need to go through the book and know, each and every one of us, whoever is listening to this or watching this video, could be undergoing through some challenges. I mean,
mhm.
because everyone is doing so. Yeah, not only the caused by the pandemic that has been ongoing, it could be in different areas of their lives.
Sure.
So we would be very glad to start and hear some of the tips and strategies to overcome the stress and anxiety.
Well, thank you. And the first one is, it's got kind of a story for you, but if people take nothing else away from this interview, is learn to become a first responder, not a first reactor.
Mhm.
So when I lived in Singapore, I learned to scuba dive,
Yeah.
and then I got trained up to rescue diver.
Okay.
And the very first thing they teach you in rescue diving is do not just jump in the water. Somebody's yelling, help, 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 whatever, or you see somebody in distress. You just don't jump off the boat or off the shoreline and go after them, because you don't know, there could be fishing nets, there
Yeah.
could be stingrays, there could be jellyfish, there could be obviously sharks in the water. I mean, you could put yourself in danger. So it's just like our firemen and the ambulance, when they come across a bad car accident, they just don't jump out of their truck, their vehicle,
Yeah.
rush to the scene. They
Mm.
stop, they pause. Is there fire? Is there smoke? Are there electrical cables? Can they get hurt? Can somebody else get hurt? That's why they're called first responders.
Yeah.
So the way to handle stress is don't react to it.
Mm-hmm.
Learn to respond to it. So take 10 seconds, breathe, ask good questions, particularly if you're in business. Don't People in business expect to make snap decisions all the time. That's what we're paid for, make decisions. But that's not necessarily the right way to do it. Pause, ask good questions. What about this situation? How can we handle this? What are our options? Because quite frankly, under stress, the brain reacts two ways. One, when we're emotionally, and I'm sure you've been, I mean, everyone's always said to themselves, I was so angry, I couldn't think straight.
Mm-hmm.
I was so mad, I couldn't think straight.
Yeah.
And it's true, because when we get angry, the back part of our brain, where
Yeah.
the amygdala is, takes over from the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex is the rational part of our brain.
Yeah.
And so it takes about 10 seconds when we make a conscious decision. I'm not going to lose my temper, or I'm not going to get emotional here. I'm going to control myself. It takes about 10 seconds for the front part of the brain to
Mm-hmm.
take over for the back part of the brain.
Yeah.
So that's why I say the first decision is to get yourself under control,
Mm-hmm.
and don't make emotional decisions. Don't react to stress.
Yeah.
Respond to stress. So
Respond.
respond. Yeah. So be a first responder. That's my message.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, because and how does because some of the things that come to us, they come to us by surprise. How do I always be ready? How should I always be ready that when something negative comes to us, I don't react, rather I respond to it?
Know our reactions. And you live in Athens, you said, and the most important two words in history ever written are on the top of the Apollo temple.
Yeah.
And it says, know thyself.
Yes.
Know yourself. Know what your reaction is. Know what triggers you.
Mm-hmm.
It's for some people, it's being interrupted
Yeah.
that triggers you. You can, for somebody wants to finish your sentence for you. For other people, it's if you're not listened to.
Mm-hmm.
For others, it could be the phone ringing. I still, to this day, I was trained at Citibank. We had to answer our phone within 3 rings because we were a very customer-focused organization.
Okay.
And even today, if I'm in an airport and I hear somebody's phone ring the 3rd time, I can't help myself. I kind of look like, and then it rings a 4th time. Now I've learned, because it used to upset me. Now I learned to keep my mouth shut. But before, 20 years ago, I'd look at the person like, aren't you going to answer your phone?
Yeah.
Because it would trigger me. It was a trigger. And so know what triggers you. And there are various things. If somebody cutting you off in traffic triggers you, understand that, and then make a conscious decision. Do I really want to ruin the next 20 minutes of my life or the next couple hours by being angry because somebody cut in front of me?
Mm-hmm.
Or do I want to just say, go on? And we have to change our patterns. If we don't change our patterns, then we're going to react the same way. So you have to consciously know. And look, we're not perfect. We all still get upset.
Sure.
Catch yourself when you are getting upset, and then say, okay, I'm going to breathe. I'm going to relax. And if you'd like, in a few minutes, I can teach your audience a little breathing exercise that will help them get under control. And it takes just a minute to do so.
Yeah, that would be good.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's good, and we appreciate that. Now let's go to tip number 2.
Tip number 2 is breathing. We all breathe. We breathe all day long.
You were there.
but we're not thinking about it. And so this is what the Navy SEALs do. And none of us have a more stressful life than a Navy SEAL, I don't think. Maybe at times.
Yeah.
But so number 2 is the Navy SEALs. It's counting to 5. And all they do is, it's called box breathing. They breathe in for 5 seconds very deeply. and hold it for 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And then a big exhale. You're exhaling more than normal for 5 seconds. And then hold the exhale for 5, 3, 4, 5. And then repeat that. Now they repeat it for up to 5 minutes. I do this. You can modify it for yourself. I do this in 8 seconds.
Okay.
8 for like 2 minutes, particularly like before I board an airplane. Like travel is stressful these days. In fact, for the last few years. And so I can just stand there and I can look out at the tarmac, watch the people with their little flashlights and flags and watch the planes go around. All I do is I just breathe in.
Yeah.
Breathe out. And no one knows what I'm doing. It's not weird. No one's paying any attention to you. You're just standing in line, and you can do this in a meeting. You can do this in your office. You can do this in your family. You can do it while you're watching television. If you're upset with your spouse, or your children, or at the TV show itself, if you get upset at the TV show, turn it off. but just breathe, purposeful, because what happens is the body automatically starts to calm itself down. And your blood pressure lowers. You start to put dopamine in your system, which is the good chemical, the happy chemical, and so you're just getting yourself under control. So that's tip number 2.
Oh, thank you, and wonderful.
Pardon me?
Now, thank you and wonderful. Now, at this point, I see that we should not react, we should respond.
Right.
And secondly, we should be consciously and deliberately breathe in a systematic way.
Yes.
In these two things, I'm observing that is about being conscious of yourself. Like you said before, is about knowing thyself. And yes, I had someone say, think what you think. We just don't allow our minds and our thoughts to wander from here to there, but we be conscious about the way we live, about the way we respond to situations, and what action we take to respond to those situations.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that. Think what you think. And then question what you think, I would add to that. I mean, I always tell people, if you're having a thought, ask yourself, is this thought benefiting me? Is this thought helping me? Is this thought helping me advance? Or is this a thought that's not doing any of those 3 things? Now, what can I do with that thought? I can change my thought. So if I have a thought, again, we all get angry, we all get emotional. In the end, if you ask yourself those 3 questions, say, well, no, this is not really helping me. This is not advancing me. This is not helping me grow. Then why do I want to keep this thought? No, let's get rid of this. Think of something else. And sometimes it's just look out the window and change your perspective. Sometimes it is just have to say, you know what? I have to admit I'm upset about this situation. I need to calm down. I will deal with this later. And I'm not going to deal with this now. I'm not going to let myself be emotionally hijacked. And I'm not going to, again, goes back to the first one, I'm not going to react. I'm going to respond later when I'm in better control.
And in the meantime, as you're waiting, breathe.
Yes. Breathe. And the next tip, go outside. Mother Nature is the best cure that we have. Go outside for 5 minutes, get some fresh air. If it's not obviously too cold where you're living, if it is, just look out the window, but do anything. Don't look at a mobile device. Don't look at an electronic device. Just look out the window, see if there's any birds flying around. Just be observant. In other words, change your thinking from yourself to what's happening outside. If you can go outside, 5 minutes of sunshine on your hands, your face, warm up your body again, obviously if it's not too hot, but 5 minutes, most people can stay in the shade if you have to. But Mother Nature, again, when you get that sun, you get that warmth, you look outside and your mind starts looking at nature and you see if somebody's walking their dog, or again, if birds are flying, or if the wind's blowing, the clouds, look at patterns. Remember when we were children? Wasn't it fun to sit on the ground and talk? Do you see that cloud? It looks like a lion. You see that cloud? It looks like a balloon, and we were happy. And so look at the clouds, just watch the cloud patterns and take your mind off things. for 5 minutes, 7 minutes.
Yeah.
Now you've calmed down, you're in a better state, you're less stressful, reduce some of your anxiety, and now go back and either face the situation or again make a conscious decision. I'm gonna face this afternoon, or I'm gonna sleep on it. I'm gonna deal with this tomorrow.
Mhm.
Or if I have to deal with it now, at least I'm in a better place to deal with it.
Ah, wonderful. So, uh, how many tips are you going to share with us? Maybe.
Well, I'll give you two more.
Yes.
One, stress is not always bad.
Okay.
So there's good stress. I mean, athletes always tell that when they get themselves pumped up or they get themselves motivated or a stressful situation in a game, that can be good. For some of us,
Mm-hmm.
we procrastinate until we get a deadline because we do better work under deadlines and under the stress of a deadline, but that's also not healthy for us. So all stress is not bad. So some stress can be good.
Yeah.
So understand that and understand the differences, whether it's helping you. Again, it's like your thoughts. Is this stress helping me or is this stress hurting me?
Mm-hmm.
And the last one, again, even if at your home, and you see me doing it here, is use your senses. Now, this coffee has a little bit of cinnamon in it. So if I was stressful, if you were asking me questions that were very stressful, Anthony, I'd go like this. And I'd smell that cinnamon and I would just focus on that cinnamon for about 10 or 15 seconds. And again, wow, what a nice smell that is. Even at the office, you can do that, whether you're having a cup of tea, if you're having something to eat, feel the texture. If you're having an apple, just feel the texture of the apple, or if you're peeling an orange, feel the skin of the orange, and just put your mind. One of the things people need to understand: your mind can only focus on one thing at a time. And I'd love to talk about multitasking with you later if you'd like. But so if your mind is focusing on how the cinnamon smells,
Yeah.
it can't focus on the kids are screaming in the background, or Anthony's questions are too difficult, or this interview's running long, I got another call coming up, or any of those. The mind can't focus on those things, which, by the way, none of those things are happening here. But that's what mindfulness is about. Mindfulness is being fully present and being aware of your body, your thoughts, your sensations, and the environment around you. And mindfulness is not about meditation or doing yoga or any of that stuff. So mindful, being fully present is another way of reducing stress. And again, you can do that with a beverage at your desk or at home or anywhere you want.
Yeah, and it's about the focus that you talk about. And I agree with you when you say that we do not actually, when we mention about multitasking, it's not that we are doing two things at the same time. It's only that we have two things which we are switching from one to the other. And I had someone give the example of a computer. I mean, we assume that the computer is multitasking, but the actual fact is that the computer is working one thing at a time, only at a very high speed.
Absolutely. Or like your apps on the phone.
Yeah.
You can have 5 apps open, but only one app is working at one time. And then you have to switch between apps. If you're messaging and doing WhatsApp and then going to LinkedIn or whatever, or going to Facebook, but you can only operate one app at a time.
Yeah.
And the phone can only operate one app at a time. And so you're absolutely right. All you're doing is switching, and that's not good for our brains.
It's not good. Why?
Two things. One, it burns our brain out. Well, actually, three things. Second, it prevents us from focusing on only one task at a time. And there's a great quote from a lady named Sandra Bond Chapman, and she started the Institute of Brain Health at the University of Dallas. And she said that multitasking is as toxic to our brains as smoking is to our lungs. And look how for the last 40 years, we've learned how bad smoking is to our lungs. There's a lot of research. Stanford University did research that says when we frequently multitask, like daily, we are training our brains to not focus, and also that we are not as efficient when we're multitasking. And even surprisingly, we're no longer as efficient when we're not multitasking. So it has an impact even when we're not multitasking. But the real reason it's bad for particularly the younger generation, which I know multitasks all the time,
Yeah.
is it's training our brain not to focus. And the inability to focus is one of the first indicators of Alzheimer's disease and dementia. So
Mhm.
basically, our younger generation, this is going to be a societal issue, are training their brains not to be able to learn to focus. And as a result, they're increasing their risk for dementia and Alzheimer's when they get in their 60s and 70s. So that's why it's bad.
Ah, okay. So do you also think that multitasking could be one of the great causes of some negative stress and the anxiety?
Definitely. And when we're talking multitask, we're really talking about cognitive multitasking. Look, any of us can watch a TV show and eat at the same time. That's not,
Mhm.
we can functionally, we can cook on the stove and answer a child's question or have a conversation with somebody while we're cooking on the stove. But
Yeah.
it's really cognitive multitasking that we're talking about. And
Mhm.
yeah, I think I think the pressure to multitask is in the workplace, particularly is one of the causes of increased stress in
Okay.
the workplace. You know, the American Psychological Association came out in 2019
Mhm.
with a report that said work stress, and this is United States information, but work stress is the number one stress factor in people's lives.
Yeah.
And if you go back 20 years ago, that was not true. 20 years ago, the top two, and it kind of went back and forth between the years, the
Mhm.
top two was family relationships,
Yes.
whether that was with your spouse, with your teenage children, with an adult, with their own parents, but any kind of, or siblings, so family relationships
Mhm.
or monetary issues. Now,
Okay.
this is pre-pandemic research.
Yeah.
Uh, so workplace is the number one cause of stress in American lives. And that's a sad commentary on where we're gone as a society. So one thing the pandemic has taught us, like,
Mhm.
one of the good things that has taught us is that, hey, we're all in the same boat. I was coaching a guy, I don't know, 6, 7 months ago, and he said he had this great experience because he was a senior executive,
Okay.
and he was talking with one of his staff, and he couldn't understand why his staff was always late with information, everything during the pandemic. And then one day his internet went out because
Mhm.
um, his wife and his two children, the two children were doing schooling from home,
Okay.
and his internet couldn't handle that. And now he understood what his employees were going through, who did not have, lived in the same wealthy neighborhoods and had the same internet, so they had less capability. And so
Mhm.
he now learned to be empathetic and understand that, hey, you know what, we're all human beings, we all have other issues that we don't talk about.
Yeah.
um, and so I think one thing is coming out of this pandemic, hopefully, is that some people, I think a lot of people are starting to reevaluate their life and saying, well, what's my priority? And is my priority to work 60 hours a week
Okay.
for a company? I mean, we had a report in January this year that people at Goldman Sachs, the banking firm, were working 100-hour weeks,
Mhm.
and we're getting totally burned out. And that's not acceptable. No organization should even allow that, much less encourage it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so there's some negatives and some positives coming out of the pandemic.
And this is what I was thinking about. When you mentioned that the biggest stressor of our days is the workplace, and then back then it was the relationships, family, and things to do with the finances and
Right.
money. Now the pandemic, and I don't know how this goes, but the pandemic has now brought the work home where there is family
Mhm.
and some reduced sources of income in some cases.
Yep.
So that could be even more stressful now that work is being done here. We have
Yeah.
some communication issues with my wife, and my children are giving me a challenge.
Yeah.
That could be really stressful, bringing all the stressors together in
It
one
is.
place.
It is. And then that's again why I published a book last year to help people overcome that stress. There's no doubt the pandemic has added more stress to our lives. I talked to a lady yesterday. and a new client of mine, and she lives in the New England area of the United States. And I asked her, when you guys going back to the office? And she says, not to the fall. And she sounded so depressed about it. I said, it sounds like you're getting tired of it. And she goes, you know what?
Mm-hmm.
I've gone from working from home to living at work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how she sees it now. Her living room is basically her office now,
Yeah.
and she's living in the office effectively. And we talked about that and some ways to getting around that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, the other thing the pandemic has done, and again, when our brain is under prolonged stress,
Yeah.
there's a part of our brain that controls emotional outbursts.
Okay.
And under prolonged stress, that part of our brain literally gets smaller.
Mm-hmm.
And this prolonged stress, and what we saw, say 6-8 months into the lockdown situations, we already saw things like increase alcohol abuse,
Mm-hmm.
increase eating,
Yeah.
increase obesity, and unfortunately increase family violence.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is for some people they're just not able to cope. That part of the brain is no longer able to cope
Mm-hmm.
and control. And then so they turn to food, they turn to binge eating, they turn to alcohol or drugs, or in worst cases they turn to hitting other family members because they lose their temper, they can't
Yeah.
control it.
Mm-hmm.
This is, as much as the governments around the world have done a pretty good job of trying to help people out financially where they can.
Mm-hmm.
I think people, hopefully the government officials, need to start thinking that this is going to have long-term societal impacts. So we need to start, governments need to switch their mindset to saying, okay, how are we going to handle these mental health issues
Mm-hmm.
long term?
Yeah.
And they're going to start popping up in 3 years from now, 5 years from now. Pre-pandemic, here again in the United States information, pre-pandemic, the American Medical Association, again the American Psychological Association, were predicting
Mm-hmm.
that Alzheimer's and dementia and stroke would increase by 60% between
Mm-hmm.
the year 2020 and 2030. Now that's pre-pandemic, 60% increase. And
Mm-hmm.
there'd be over 10 million Americans dealing with Alzheimer's by the year 2030. Well,
Yeah.
again, those numbers are only going to increase as a result of the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So this is going to be a societal issue.
And it's understandable because of, I mean,
Yeah.
but even when we are back into normal, things are still stressful in very many instances for different reasons. So yeah, it's going to increase, and we expect it to increase. And this is why we thank you for coming up with this book, which I know you've not given us all the tips. There are still more tips in the book.
There's a lot of tips in the book.
And this is why we should go and get the book and use it to help us
Yeah,
to deal with stress and anxiety and prevent it from bringing the negative aspects that you put forth.
absolutely.
So where can people find your book?
It's on Amazon, like every other author, in both paperback and Kindle
Yeah.
formats. I kept this book. This is the first book. It's not leadership based, so this book is for everybody. It is for leaders, but it's for day to day people.
Mm-hmm.
All the tips you can use both in your professional life and your personal life. I've kept it short. I've kept it really aimed at the general public, and I've kept it low. I think, if I recall right, it's less than $15 on Amazon. I think
Okay.
the Kindle price is less than $7. I
Thank
can't
you for
remember
that.
now. But
Thank you.
yeah, I'm not trying to make money with this book. I don't expect to make money with this book.
Yeah.
This is more me trying to make a message out there, look, my father suffered from early Alzheimer's
Mm-hmm.
before he passed away, and I was his primary caregiver. And I can tell you, it is financially and emotionally devastating to care for your parent
Sure.
when they're in that early stage of Alzheimer's and dementia.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is kind of sharing what I learned, caring for my father, the research I did, and trying to help other people so they don't have to go through what I did.
And that's very good of you, very thoughtful of you, giving us this wonderful gift. And
Well,
I also hear you mention about working with clients, helping them to apply the tips that you've been given already, and some that we've not had.
yeah.
So how does how do you work with them? How do they get to you? How do you arrange the sessions and things like that?
Well, professionally, I mean, you can reach me. My website is called
Yeah.
calienteleadership.com. Caliente is Caliente.
Mm-hmm.
It's a Spanish word that means hot, but it also means passionate, and I'm passionate about leadership. So
Okay.
my contact details are there. I do one-to-one coaching sessions. I'll do group coaching sessions as well, and so that's usually when people contact me through there. There's also resources on my website. Yesterday I uploaded, I think, 30 articles about
Mm-hmm.
brain health, about
Mm-hmm.
decision making
Yeah.
onto my. I upload the links onto my website. So under excuse me,
It's okay.
under the resources section,
Mm-hmm.
and there'll be articles. You just click on the link, it takes you to the actual article on the website. So I'm just trying to get information out there for people. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And that will be very useful to the listeners and those who are watching when
yeah,
they get to hear the videos and read the articles that you
yeah.
provide unto us. So that's very good of you and very kind of you. And
Well, thank you, Anthony.
we do appreciate you. But before you go, leave us with a parting shot.
A parting shot. Well, I think part of this is giving back. I mean, Anthony, you're a good example. You're giving back to the book world. You wrote your first book. You're giving back to authors. You give, in my case with the book, I tried to share the information I had,
Mhm.
recover my costs with the printing costs, but have a purpose in life. Have a purpose that's bigger than you.
Yes.
And my very last comment is, and you talked earlier about the new reality. Change your mindset. We
Mhm.
don't want to go back to the old reality. We
Mhm.
don't want to accept the new reality.
Yeah.
Wake up tomorrow morning and ask yourself, how can I make this a better reality?
Yeah.
And I think we can. I mean, I think work life harmony, not work life balance, but work life harmony is going
Yeah.
to come out of the pandemic for those who sit and evaluate what's important in my life. Do I really need to purchase everything, or should I spend more time on experiences? Should I think about my long-term brain health? How
Mhm.
can we make this a better reality coming up? Because we've been consumed by consumerism, by capitalism, by always trying to grow faster and faster and have more and more stuff, and that worked for a while, but and maybe for many people that's still what they want.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, it's going to be how do I grow myself? How do I grow my family? How do I grow my spirituality?
Mhm.
How do I grow? What hobbies do I want to do? How can I have harmony in my life, not balance? So
No.
that's my last thought for your audience.
Oh, so you say we cannot have balance, but we can have harmony.
I think so. Yeah, I think work-life balance is really a bad concept anyway, because you never had it at any one point in time. You had to kind of look at it over a year.
Yeah.
There are going to be times when you're spending 65, 70% of your time on work, and then
Mhm.
there's going to be times when you spend 70 or 65% of your time on your personal life, your family, your vacations, whatever. But at no one time did you ever really achieve 50-50 anyway. But now think about harmony. How, working from home is fine for some people. Like people, they've saved themselves up to 2 hours of commuting time. Now, how do you put that 2 hours to use?
Mhm.
Don't unless you want to. If you really want to sit around and watch movies, then that's fine. But if you want to write a book, write a book. If you want to write a short story, write a short story. If you want to learn how to cook, take those 2 hours a day and spend an hour and a half watching cooking shows instead of watching reruns of Big Bang Theory or something like that. So utilize your time and create a new and better reality for yourself.
Oh, that's very good of you. That's very good. To you who is listening there, you've had it all. And we have a very great chance to connect with someone who's going to either help us write a book, help us deal with stress, give us some leadership guidance. What else could you be asking for? Don't waste one more time. Connect with Steve, follow Steve, and interact with him. Read the articles and gain as much as you can. Invest in yourself. Don't waste
Absolutely.
yourself. Invest
Thank
in
you, Anthony.
yourself. And this
Absolutely.
is the chance. Just use the opportunity and do it. So thank you very much for being our guest. Thank you, Steve. We really appreciate.
Thank you, Anthony, and thank you for having this program and for helping your audience meet other authors around the world. And congratulations on your book as well.
Thank you very much.